Just preemptively, I'd like you to pulse when we have like a set team comp, and maybe when we see the enemy team comp. That's always handy.
Perfect, we'll do that. Skip in a little bit. Wait till it. Yeah. Okay, that seems like what we're going to be running right here. Any comments on that?
It's actually a pretty good comp for Orisa in particular. So let's have a look at this comp. The only slightly off pick is your duo partner, the Brigades. Reason being, if you look at the other main tanks, right, Reinhardt and Winston, both Reinhardt and Winston have very limited range. Like Reinhardt has a 5-meter hammer and Winston has a 6-meter Tesla cannon with range, so both of them have to be fairly up close in order to deal damage. Whereas Orisa's the stellar opposite. She wants to play keep away. She has a ranged weapon, and she's commonly set up with long-range damage dealers like Junkrat, like Soldier, like Widowmaker. So with Orisa, you commonly want to keep the enemies at bay from you, preferably a long distance. And Brigitte is similar to Reinhardt, where Brigitte has to be like up close in someone's face in order to get value. So this can work, the Orisa and the Brigitte, supposing that they actually get really close to you.
Okay, so you're saying it's a bit awful. So you're saying it's like the Brigitte wants people to be up close, Orisa doesn't. So it's like the composition has basically disagreeing with what they want to do.
A tiny bit, yeah. It's not like you cannot overcome this, or it's not like it cannot work. It's just a bit of an off pick, which might have to work around a bit.
Okay. Is there anything on the DPS side of things, whether it's the Pharah, the Junkrat, or I guess even the D.Va to an extent, that would change how you would play Orisa here?
Yeah. If you look at Orisa's kit in general, you have the normal shield, of course, which you put in the ground. There's no way that you can like put it up and down like Reinhardt can. You just have to work before you put it. And Fortify is like, you get a bit of damage resistance, 50%, which is pretty significant for about 4 seconds. And I commonly use my Fortify as a get out of jail free card. If I'm in trouble and I need to get back quickly, it's press shift and walk away. And halts can be used in many different ways, but if you want to play Orisa and you want to like effectively rank up and you want to have like an effective impact in the game, halt is your go-to ability. It's because it's very useful for combo plays, and especially with the comp you have now, you have D.Va, Junkrat, and Pharah. Just imagine all their free ultimates. What would happen if you pool like 4 people into either a D.Va bomb or Junkrat tire or a Pharah barrage?
Right.
That's playmaking right there.
Right. Okay. Perfect. So I've always been told that the use of halt, so the right click, is like half of what makes an Orisa good. Like a huge chunk of the Orisa, I guess, skill curve. Would you agree with that statement, or not so much?
It really depends. I mean, there's more to Orisa, of course, but I think halt is definitely the most crucial ability, because it's the hardest one to master. Her primary fire, her shielding, and her shift ability aren't very complex in any sense, if you will. Whereas the halt ability has a few like intricacies that you need to know in terms of mechanics. And like I said, it's like your playmaking card, if you will. So if you can get your halt to work very well and get good combos with that, if you synergize very well with your team in that sense, it's a big part of Orisa's kit, yeah. Perfect. You can still work well with like normal shielding and maybe some primary fires, but then you're mostly relying on your team to actually get some playmaking done, and it's always handy if you can cover some blind spot of your possible solo queue teammates by doing some playmaking yourself. So this is pretty good. You're calling for some general strategy, like, hey, let's hold up here and whatnot. Okay, so we've seen our own team comp. Let's see what the enemy team has.
What about his initial positioning, do you think, right here?
Initial positioning is perfectly fine.
And Brigitte's behind her.
Okay, I think it was a soldier you saw, but good call anyways. By now I would start... could you pause for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we saw Brigitte and a soldier on the right side top, and we see Roadhog and Reinhardt up front, right? In essence, if you want to like get some damage in, you're mostly looking at tanks with Orisa's gun, and the simple reason is that Orisa's gun is a relatively slow-moving projectile, which has spread from the first bullet already.
Okay.
So if you want to shoot something at long range, because it's squishy, it's very hard to get reliable damage in. So just shooting tanks is much more reliable.
Right. So you're saying it's better to just pressure tanks, farm up ult charge, put in some shield break and or just some chip damage to discourage them from pushing forward.
Yeah, especially because both like Brigitte has her own little shield, so you cannot really shoot her effectively.
Right.
And deal damage to her.
Right.
And Soldier has a self-heal, and Brigitte has self-heal if she's close enough with her range.
Okay.
So it's going to be very hard to do anything meaningful in terms of damage to Soldier and Brigitte.
Okay, so like, we'll keep playing because I have a question, but I'm gonna pause a second first.
All right. We see a Hanzo as well and a Moira. Okay, we've seen the entire team comp on both teams.
Now, it looks like we're kind of going back because we see somebody flanking behind you. Is that your job to be coping with that sort of flank, for lack of a better word?
In this case, not. Like, mobile heroes like Winston, to some extent, can deal with flankers. But if you're playing Orisa, the most value of your shield is in the front line, so you can pressure the enemy front line.
Okay.
And Orisa's gun, like I said, if there's anyone flanking, it's commonly a flanker squishy hero like Tracer or Genji. I believe in this case it's Roadhog, so not the common flanker, but still.
Yes. So
and like I said, Orisa's primary fire is very ill-suited for dealing with flankers.
So not only is your gun ill-suited, but your lack of mobility means that it's difficult for usually to deal with flankers.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so peeling isn't as much of a thing with Orisa. Peeling dealing with the backline.
Yeah.
Alright, so we kind of have an idea of what the team is running here, at least in terms of tanks, Ryan Roadhog. How do you play against a Ryan Roadhog as an Orisa?
It's commonly just keep your distance. The Roadhog is not your biggest threat right now. Simple reason being, if he wants to hook you, you can use Fortify as a response, so you can see the hook traveling, and then you can Fortify if your shield is not up. That is.
Right. So why do you not get hooked through Fortify? What does Fortify bring to the table to prevent?
Fortify is an ability of Orisa, which is unique to Orisa, that denies basically all crowd control effects, including Roadhog's hook. So if you see a Roadhog hook coming, and you use Fortify before the hook latches onto you, the hook just snaps off, doesn't hook anything, and it's on a cooldown.
So no hooking, no boop, no stun.
No hooking, no boop, no freeze, no stun, no pin, nothing.
Okay.
But do know, once you are hooked, you cannot press shift in the trajectory of the hook. You can only press shift after you're hooked again.
Okay.
So you need to be in time.
Okay, sounds good.
So yeah, like I said, I'm not too afraid of Roadhog here, just because you have both D.Va and yourself with shielding and Fortified to deny hooks. But you need to watch out for Reinhardt. Oh, there's Tracer. Okay.
Nice.
But you need to watch out for Reinhardt, because Reinhardt's shield, Reinhardt has less shield power than Orisa does.
Right.
But the big advantage of Reinhardt is that Reinhardt can put his shield up and down wherever he likes to, whereas Orisa's shield is based on a cooldown. So what this might not be as much the case in this rank, but what good Reinhardts in higher ranks will do is that they will wait for the Orisa to put her shield down, and then they'll try to rush past it. So then, in that case, your Orisa barrier doesn't have much value anymore, because the entire enemy team has circumnavigated it.
Now, I find it's helpful whenever playing Orisa to look at the main tank and to have a game plan for how I generally want my, let's just say, my vanilla normal halts to look like. So like Orisa, I'll pull them up in the air and try and get damage from there, you know, or if it's a Winston, I'm going to look for him to jump in and pull him back outside of his bubble or whatever. But for Reinhardt, let's look at what he does with this halt right here. So this would be what I call a vanilla halt. Like this, he's just going to kind of pull him. Is this the kind of halt that you'd like to see against a Ryan Roadhog, and if so, why?
In this case, I would say yes, because as you can see, basically you pulled them back approximately 5 or 6 meters, which has given them some space again. And like I said, Orisa has more range damage than Reinhardt does, and she has more shielding than Reinhardt does. So whenever she can keep her distance from the enemy team, it's pretty good. Okay,
so it's about, if you're going up against Reinhardt, trying to just halt him back, and just bust him up during that time.
Commonly, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Reinhardt's trapped.
Good rest.
Oops.
I mean, if you could rewind it a couple seconds.
Yes.
So, as you can see, your crosshair is just lurking over the edge there. And wherever you actually like hold your crosshair when you press the E button, that's where your shield will land. So if you want to like on top of this little ledge, you need to actually have your crosshair on that.
Right. So his crosshair, I don't know if you guys can see it in stream. His crosshair is just over this ledge, and so Argyll is saying is if you just literally where your crosshair is, that's where the shield's gonna go. Right. So if you miss it by just a bit, like we do there with your crosshair, then that's exactly where the shield's gonna go as well.
Yeah. In this case, it's not the biggest deal in the world because you already killed the enemy Reinhardt, so you have they cannot really put pressure onto you because they have no shield, and you can just still shoot at them and contest the payload. But if there was an enemy Reinhardt here, he would be very close to you, and he would instantly rush past your shield.
Right.
So in this case, I'll just be thinking about getting back up to your normal position again, because they can quickly overrun you.
Right, because we drop, we mess up shield, we go to chase down some stagger picks, but at this point we have to remember that Ryan is coming back, we need to reposition again.
Could you open the map of point 1 real quick?
The what?
Can illustrate something. the map of Route 66.1. Do you know
let
how
me
to
see if
spell it?
I can find one. Route 66 bird.
It's also in the visor itself. If you do
Is
add
it?
static image and
Oh,
then
wow.
type in Route 66.
Okay,
I
so
believe it's-
guide my mouse here. Where am I going?
I'll watch on stream. Your face cam's just in the way. It should be at add static image.
Oh, I see it.
And then there should be a search bar for Route
Yes,
66,
I
and then
see
it should show.
You're opening up my world. I had no idea. This is
Alright,
amazing.
welcome.
Okay, so I see. I feel like this is kind of what we want here. Okay, let me know if
Yes,
that's
perfect.
okay.
So initially, guys, we're holding up the gas station, which is the standard position to hold up, and it's very strong.
Yep.
Main reason being, like I said, Orisa wants to play keep away, because Orisa is very vulnerable once they can either overrun you or when they can attack you from many different directions.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is with high ground, the only way to really combat high ground is to take high ground, aka they have to find a path towards you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on the low ground, like you are right now, you're basically standing just outside the cave. People can take the gas station for free now and shoot you from behind. They can take the closet and shoot you from there. They can take the catwalk, shoot you from there. And they can just take the mid lane, if you will, where the little arrow begins just now.
Yep.
So right now you're in a situation where there's many angles of attack that the enemy can take on you. Whereas if you're playing Orisa, you can only shield one direction, and maybe D.Va can matrix the other direction for 2 seconds. So you want to look with Orisa to hold a position which is A, hard to take for enemies, and B, which leaves you vulnerable to maybe 1 or 2 attack routes only, because you can only shield one of them reliably, and if you're
Right.
being attacked from 4 directions, Orisa's in a bad spot.
So if our shield is placed here, that's kind of not the best color I could have chosen, but that means that damage from, this direction is, whoops, that's the next. This direction is blocked, this direction is blocked, this direction is blocked, even to an extent, this direction is blocked. So they would have to go all the way over here,
Yes.
or even over here, and we would be shooting them as they do that. We would be
Exactly, you keep your distance.
and if their team is doing it as a clump, we can also reposition ourselves to maybe here.
Exactly.
So okay.
And one other strategy the enemy team could employ is just all push the payload on mid, but that would also leave them vulnerable to being shot at. And since their range is quite limited with heroes like Reinhardt, if you just shoot down on them, you have a perfect position. So
Right. Okay.
we want to be looking at holding high ground here.
Okay. Now I'm going to remove this image.
Press C.
C. No. Come on now. No. Wood tier stream. Oh wait, clear screen.
Clear screen.
Ah. I'm really good with technology. Lightwaves,
Same.
don't say anything, please.
Right. Could you rewind the halt on Tracer real quick?
Yes, we will come back. Okay,
Okay.
so here's Tracer.
Okay, so this is just I'll just get into halt like in general real quickly. But with halt in general, if you could pause it, what I commonly try to do if I try to halt people in, I try to halt them above their head, and the reason is, if you could draw it out for me.
Yeah. So if we've got, let's say, Tracers right here, you would halt like, I don't know.
Trace is an exception, but I'm making the general rule now.
Okay, so an exception to the rule, but let's just talk about as if this is not
Yes.
Tracer.
Right, so let's say the green across is the halt, right? The character on the ground, once the halt is activated, the character will move in a straight line towards the halt. And after that, they're suspended in the air, and they have very limited movement control, so they will drop down to the ground in a linear line again. Both of these movements, the yellow arrows, they allow for very little movement or freedom of movement on the person being halted, which means that people can shoot like across the line of the initial arrow when they're being pulled towards the halt, and they can shoot them very reliably when you're falling down. Whereas if you halt them on like an even level, they just get suspended a tiny bit, but they don't have the double linear line, they only have one.
Right, so like if you halt them here, you've got the one arrow that you can bring to the table.
Yeah.
But then immediately afterwards, they have full control of their mobility, 80,
Exactly.
strafe, whatever. Okay, perfect. That's good to know.
Yeah, Tracer is an exception because her mobility is top notch. Of course, she has 3 blinks in her recall, and once she sees your halt coming, she can oftentimes just react with it by blinking away from it.
Right, and get outside the range of that halt. Okay.
Exactly. So with Tracer, I like to halt the ground in between us, because halt automatically activates as soon as it hits a solid object, whereas you need to manually activate it if you have it in the air.
So
if you halt the ground in between you, it can maybe force her in, and is going to probably mess up her movement pattern a bit.
it gives her less time to react to it, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay. I guess here too we also have to wonder if our attention could be better spent elsewhere as well.
Yeah. You don't want to fight tracers too much. Sometimes you have to, but...
No hook.
Okay, so this is huge. Supercharger, again, is one of those things that I've always believed is a huge part of the Orisa's kit. It's not just when we use it, it's where we place it. What do you think about what we're doing with it right here? And the timing, placement, you know, anything else you want to
The timing in itself is alright, because if you look at the clock, we're about halfway on the first phase. And since Orisa got her small little buff with 15% extra like ultimate gain, it now allows her to commonly use 2 superchargers, like 2 bongos, per phase. Like normally it would take 2.5 to 3 minutes for an Orisa bongo to charge, aka once per phase of 4 minutes.
Yep.
But now it's like a little under 2 minutes, which allows you to squeeze in 2 superchargers per phase commonly.
Good to know.
So that's a very welcome change for Orisa players. As for the placement, it's relatively okay. You've got the payload to cover it a bit. Only thing you need to watch out for is people flanking around right side. But in general, the placement, it is alright, but in general, I wouldn't really be looking at holding this side of the payload here. I would rather hold the left side, where Brigitte and your other teammate are standing. And then you can put a bongo just behind the wall there and still keep line of sight, and just shield up there, hold a long sideline again so you keep your distance and you keep firing down.
How would you describe Orisa Bongo in terms of functionality? I mean, obviously it increases damage by 50%, right? But
Yes.
what is the purpose when you place Bongo? Is it to get kills? Is it to pressure shields? Is it to, like, what's the goal when you place a Bongo? Like, what are you trying to accomplish?
So in the current state of the meta, I commonly don't use bongos for like wombo combos, so I will not use bongos to damage boost like a soldier ult or a Genji ult.
Okay.
Because commonly there's already enough damage boost in the game with Zenyatta, Discord, and Mercy damage amplification.
Right.
So you commonly don't need to put an extra ultimate in there, because there's standard abilities that do the relatively same thing.
Okay.
What I would use it for, commonly to build your own ultimates. So let's say you have a soldier and a Junkrat, and let's say a Diva, who are all around 50 or 60% ult charge. If they all get damage boost of 50% and they deal a lot of damage, they will all get their ultimates for the next fight. Meaning, if you win one fight using bongos, and you farm, let's say, 2 or 3 ultimates based off the bongo damage charge, then you just keep rotating your ultimates very effectively. And by the time they've used their ultimates, you'll get your own bongos back again, and you can use it again.
That's actually something extreme we've not touched on yet. That was something that's a little bit more advanced, but ult rotations, where you're using ultimates to build up others. In other words, Reinhardt uses Shatter, gets a kill, Zarya grabs, Reinhardt swings in the grab, builds up another Shatter, and so you're using Bongo to kind of facilitate the people building ults into themselves. Like you said, somebody's close to an ult, you're not just using Bongo to create shield pressure and to discourage a push, you're using it to help your team build ultimates, so that's very interesting.
You commonly don't want to like discourage a push, because if you use your bongos preemptively, so very early, and the enemy team hasn't really fully committed to the fight yet, like they haven't pushed in yet, they can just say, oh wait, they bongoed early, let's just take cover, wait it out, and then you get no value out of it.
So use it like the last cusp, once you've actually seen they commit to a fight. One thing I do want to mention, I know this is super, super basic, just so everybody knows, if you're ever on like attack, or really on defense as well, but avoid placing bongo in front of the payload, obviously, if it's moving, because it will destroy it if it hits it. So, I mean, it looks like we're going to be contesting it, so this thing isn't going anywhere, at least until we die or reposition, but just worth mentioning.
Good tip, yeah.
In the back.
So what we're doing now is good. As you can see, Hanzo, he's a fairly low mobility target, and he has no self-sustain. So he only has his leap, but it's not very significant compared to Orisa's halt. Like, the range of Orisa's halt is 6 or 7 meters, and Hanzo's leap's only 4. So shooting at Hanzo's, and maybe even pulling Hanzo's in for a halt, is a pretty good call, I would say, just because he doesn't really have the mobility or sustain to prevent him.
You know, focus on tanks, but if you have a target that obviously presents itself easier, then go for that target.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tanks are generally easy targets, but like stationary squishes, think Hanzo, think McCree, think Zenyatta, those are very efficient targets to pull in with halts, just because they don't have the mobility or the sustain to really get away from it easily.
Okay. Again, I kind of have to ask ourselves, like, what is the plan now? If you're playing this Orisa, what's the plan? Like, in terms
ideally, like in terms of just general like match plan, I would try to hold high ground as long as I could.
Okay, so
and
again,
only give up high ground when it's needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just need.
And then after every team fight, reset to high ground.
Okay. So we seem to have a problem with us resetting.
Okay.
Like, we kind of take high ground, and then in these between fight stages, we just kind of sit and low ground.
You kind of hang around, yeah. Now I would really get back, because as you can see... Okay, let's pause it real quickly when they just engage. Yeah, okay, so this is perfect. So you're putting a shield... You can play it, and then just as the Roadhog walks past your shield, could you pause it there?
Oh, I mean, a little bit further back.
Alright, so we spoke about keeping your distance with Orisa. Right now, you put your shield approximately 3 meters away from the enemy tanks, which means they can literally... They have Moira ulti going on, and they have Brigitte ulti, which means that those tanks are not scared to get in the fight. Like, they have a lot of healing coming their way. Seeing as you don't have high ground, first of all, and because you're very close to them, they can literally just hold W and M1 onto you, and you'll probably be in a nasty spot.
Okay, perfect. 1 second. Hey, Pepper, can I have a laptop charger, please? Okay, sorry about that.
As you can see, Rogue has pushed past your shield, Brigitte has pushed past your shield, Reinhardt's pushed past your shield, and unfortunately you're dead.
Yeah, so if you could ask yourself, like, I know we kind of already answered this question, but why was that fight lost?
It's because you didn't reset to high ground when the fight was won.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Perfect.
Could you pause for a second, please? So we see the ability cooldowns, right? Like I said, you commonly want to use Halt as a playmaking tool, but if you're ever in a sticky situation where someone rushes past your shield, it's always a valid and viable tactic to use Halt to displace them a bit and move them behind your shield again, so you have cover, and then you can walk back in the meantime.
So, like we're saying, we're being pressured here. You would use Halt,
and
you would launch it this direction and pull them.
Yeah, and Broke is actually going to do that if you watch it very carefully.
Okay.
Just play it out. So he's used Fortify, and then he halts them backwards a bit now.
A little unsuccessful, but that's unlucky. He had the right idea, though.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're forced to use Fortify and Halt simultaneously, and every time when when you are in any way forced to use those two abilities, it means you're either in a lot of trouble already, or you're soon to be in a lot of trouble, because, like I said, Halt is your playmaking potential, but can be used to keep threats at bay if needed, and Fortify is your get out of jail free card. In this case, you have literally all abilities are on cooldown, which means the enemy can rush you at will. So if you have no Fortify and no Halt, there's nothing to really stop the enemy from pushing past your shield and start doing damage to you and your team, other than just raw damage and killing enemies, which is not always reliable.
And it's worth knowing, too, especially as I've climbed from Silver to Masters, is that people in higher ranks, they start to track this stuff. In lower tiers, nobody really pays attention to this crap at all. They're just they're focused on clicking heads and, when to use ults, if even that. But once you start to climb and prove, people will watch for this, and they will take advantage of that. If they see an Orisa without Fortify, you will be dove. You will be pressured hard. If they see you without Hope...
And you will be crowd controlled.
You will be crowd controlled, right. So it's worth noting that although you might not be punished for that exactly in a lower tier, people will be looking out for that the higher you climb.
Sure. Because we're not just coaching to get you up one tier. We want to give you general advice that can be helpful across all levels of play.
Exactly what Scruddy said last week, so... Excellent.
We're on the same pages.
Yeah, you guys are both idiots right now.
Yeah. Right, so let's pause it real quick.
Yes, sir.
So we just lost Junkrat. So there's no realistic chance to contest point 1 with a great deal of success, I would say. It's going to be very hard. But on top of that, your Junkrat is going to be in the far zone, which is all the way at the end of the 3rd phase of route. That's where your Junkrat will respawn. So by now, I would not think about pushing up. I would think about getting back and maybe securing the high ground positions again, so you can keep your distance.
So I'm going to let it play and see where he positions first. Hey, listen, he called for it. He called for high ground.
Nice, that's good, that's good.
But we'll see where he chooses to position, and see if you guys kind of agree in terms of positioning. All right, so
this is a fine position. It's a bit on the aggressive side, but then again, your team is also playing quite aggressively still, so I can see that. If you could rewind a couple seconds on what he has on the middle bridge part, usually we hold just on the corner where the doorway is, and we just hold this long sideline.
Okay.
That's where people commonly hold with Orisa. But in this case, where you actually end up holding, it's still relatively okay. It's because you still have a long distance to go from the enemy team, so they cannot really effectively get to you yet.
Right.
And seeing as your team is also pushing up quite aggressively, I could see why you want to go with them, so you're all kind of doing the same thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Orisa positioning doesn't have to be played as static as some players put it. You could put your shield here, and then as the payload moves, you give space until you reach a corner. Especially as your shield breaks, until you're able to play near that corner. But during this time, you were able to punish that shield and apply pressure during this entire extent. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like you pointed an arrow where Farah's kind of standing. Like I said, Orisa is very strong when she can keep threats at bay, but I would not really recommend starting here and then going to the other position. The simple reason being, if this is something for especially higher ranks, I think, will do. But if they see you like positioning where Farah is as a team, they'll probably just push the payload and use the blue building there as cover underneath, and still push the payload through without taking damage. And after that, they would use the what is it, like the little market stalls, like they have these things on top just by the railings. They will use those for cover. And still push the payload through. So if you have the green arrow, which is the long angle, or the orange pink arrow, sorry, you have like a constant sideline which you have to fight through. Whereas if you have this little shorter sideline, it makes it easier for the enemy to see cover while still pushing the payload.
Right. It's also worth noting that the more mobility the enemy team has, the more cautious you have to play with aggressive positioning, because they can and will punish that positioning a lot faster. So if they're running Winston D.Va, even a positioning like this or this might be aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah, like we said, since your team is pushing up a bit aggressively, the shield placement here is fine, and you're just putting in damage.
Right.
I'm kind of still waiting for Junkrat to get back, so we're just poking from range without fully committing, hopefully.
Right. What do you think about this? Like, I've noticed this a couple times where we'd have a Hog here and a Reinhardt shield here. What's your target priority with this? Because I've seen us go for the Reinhardt shield a lot instead of the Hog. Would you think that's the correct decision here?
I would go for the Hog. It's basically shooting someone's actual health will possibly confirm a kill, which is more value than doing shield damage, of course. But on top of that, it allows for you to get ult charge, and the more supercharges you can put out means you can put out more pressure on the enemy team. And since Supercharger is a damage amplification tool, it can also allow your own teammates to put up more pressure again.
So you're charging your ult to win fights and charging your teammates' ult to win fights by shooting fat targets. Right.
The only downside would be that the enemy does get some support ults, or whole Hog a bit quicker if Hog heals himself or Moira heals him.
But let's be honest, if you were to trade whole Hog for Bongo, you'd make that trade every time.
Yeah, every day. And I would do the same for Moira ulti.
Yep. So just like he's not using halt here. Do you think do you think it's good to just kind of save halt here because he doesn't really have the need for it? Do you see an opportunity for halt here? Just because it's been a little while since we've used that ability, is there really a good time to use it now, or should he just wait?
I would press tab a lot and see what ultimates are coming up, because like I said at the beginning, you have a Pharah, a Junkrat, and a D.Va, and all three of those heroes are excellent heroes to combo with.
Okay.
And if like they can use your halt with their ultimate.
Right.
So I would use it quite aggressively in this case, because like I said, if you pull 3 people together in a Junkrat tire, that's 3 kills. If you put 3 people together in a Pharah ult, that's 3 kills. And probably the same goes for a D.Va ultimate, supposing there's no Reinhardt shield in the way.
So working on his, working on keeping an eye on where his team is going to be using or what they're going to be using.
Yeah, because with his team, like with his team comp, I'd be looking at trying to make a lot of plays with my halts. Because imagine this, right? If you're using Junkrat tire and halt and you get 3 kills, that basically means you've won the team fight, guaranteed, and you used only 1 ultimate. And then you still have a Pharah barrage, and you can do the same thing. And then after that, you have a D.Va ult, and you can do the same thing.
You're only committing an ability that you're going to get back 10 seconds later. I don't even know.
Exactly.
It's not even 10 seconds. It's less than
8 seconds, yeah.
So,
but you're using 1 ultimate to win fights, and you can rotate ultimates and build new ones in the meantime. So with this comp, like the enemy isn't very mobile. They cannot really push past your shield very well. So you don't have to use halt in a defensive way to keep people at bay a lot.
Yep.
And seeing as it's been a while since some people ulted, I would literally just ask people like, hey, Junkrat, when are you going to ult in combo or something like that?
Okay. You have a lot of damage on your team right now. A lot of damage. They're running D.Va, Orisa, and double projectiles. So that's going to be a ton of pressure on these 2 tanks.
Okay, so now the Rhino's no bear. Okay, well, hold up. Okay, there's a lot of ults being committed, but you heard the Junkrat. You heard the Junkrat voice line go off behind you.
All right, I'm gonna turn this up a bit. Yep, there it is.
And you see it as well. I would literally, like I said, seeing as the Junkrat tire does 600 damage, it's an insta-kill on most characters. D.Va Bomb is 1000 damage, insta-kill on basically everyone. Pharah Barrage is damage over time, but it's still an incredible amount of damage. So neither of those ultimates really need damage amplification, aka the Orisa ulti, to be successful. So I would not use bongos here, seeing as you're using tire. And as soon as I would hear my Junkrat voice line go off, I would just pull right click in like the middle of the enemy team and pull as many people together as I can. And with Sage Junkrat, dude, I'm pulling them in,
Right.
and then you just
Big kill.
get a combo.
Big kill. Worth noting too that Bongo does not damage boost Riptire.
I think it doesn't need. It's a separate entity.
So, if nothing else, after the recent changes to Mercy and Orisa, the Hanzo Wombo combo, that is all gone. So, separate entities cannot be damage boosted.
Correct. Yeah.
So a lot of ults.
Yeah. Yes.
Oof. That's a.
And you're 1-up now.
Oh, Tracer's on the back. Tracer's
One thing I've seen a couple times now is that you use halt, but then forget to activate it. Just so you know, like right-click activates your halt, and then it activates when it hits a solid surface, like a wall or ceiling or floor. But you can also activate it manually by pressing right-click again. And we've seen a couple times now where you fire your right-click, your halt, but did not activate it, which is
right.
did not
So
activate it
you
in
need to
time.
right-click and then right-click again where you want it to actually activate.
Yes.
Okay.
What you're doing now is fine. You're running away from Brigade, which is what every sane man would do, I think.
As to say, after that spray we saw earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so positioning here.
It's a bit on the close end, I would say.
Okay.
Hog can just hide behind the little things we spoke about earlier and still contest the payload. Reiner can shield as well.
So they've got a bit of cover. They're very close, and we're still down on Mercy most likely.
Yes. And your Junkrat.
What do you think about that?
This pull's kind of fine. Keeps people at bay, keeps the pressure on.
Sure.
Hog is ulting. The thing is with Roadhog, he is an incredibly durable character with his large health pool and self-sustain, but he cannot undo his ult in any way. So once he has used his ultimate, or has started using it, he's fully committed to it.
Okay.
So he's oftentimes a very good focus target because he cannot heal himself up or run away effectively when he's using his ultimate. So if there's a Roadhog ulting, maximum focus on the Roadhog.
Right. He can die. What do you think about this? I can't tell if this was an error or I'm pretty sure this was a purposeful shield. What do you think about this shield? And most importantly, what do you think about us dropping off of the high ground?
I mean, there's only one reason why I would want to drop here, and that is if we are so many people down that we want to die quickly on payload and just regroup. But your Mercy and Junkrat are still in spawn, and you've just lost your Diva mech. So
I think we've got
basically, you're
back.
fighting this. Oh, Mercy's back. Oh, yeah, true. Still, you are down a Diva mech, and Junkrat may be back. But still, even if it's like even, I wouldn't really want to drop this close to them.
Yes.
Because we're going to see the same story as we saw in the first phase. They're going to rush past your shield, in which case you have no shielding, so no damage mitigation.
We'll see if they do that. Looks like Ryan is
For now, they're not, because his
backing
barrier
off.
is down. Roadhog is flanking a bit. So this is good. Now you're just shooting Roadhog or building ultimate. Okay, but now I would think about using Fortify.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Basically, like the normal armor HP that you have already gives damage reduction. But like punching the right has
for it, man. All right.
He was going to confirm the kill, yeah. But with Fortify, it also gives you damage reduction. So unless I like need to block a very urgent threat with Fortify, like a Reinhardt pin or a Roadhog hook, I commonly want to use Fortify only when I'm in danger of dying, which is commonly around the 200 health mark. Because once you get like the story of armor, my own HP armor gives you damage mitigation, which makes sure that you die a bit slower and that makes sure the enemy doesn't gain as much ultimate charge. And Fortify essentially does the same.
Okay.
So you would preferably want to use your shield first, then a bit of your like normal armor HP, and then you want to use Fortify.
Okay, so you're looking like this is like right at this point you'd say is your Fortify threshold, maybe a little bit into your armor.
It depends, yeah. Like in higher ranks, I use Fortify quite reactively for when I'm caught out.
Yep.
And the simple reason is that Widowmaker and Hanzo dominate the higher ends of the ladder.
Okay.
And their damage is very significant.
So it's not just health threshold; it's also recognizing what threats you have on the enemy team.
Yeah.
And
but in the enemy team comp, they don't really have any insta kills like Widowmaker or Hanzo, I believe, right now. So I would just use the 200 armor HP and then the Fortify, and hopefully you'll be fine by then.
Okay. So we're going in. We don't even need Fortify.
Yeah. All right. So this halt's kind of fine.
I think again we forgot to detonate it. I feel like
It could be, yeah. But the I think I did see it latch, so I think it did, but
okay.
I don't know. Okay, let's rewind this thing where the Junkrat gets hooked.
Ryan
Any pause it? Okay. So tanks are excellent shielders, but they're also excellent body blockers. So I spoke before about Ryan has a mobile shield, so he can turn his shield in different directions and block things like rotor hooks and follow up like that. But tanks are also excellent body blockers. So if I'm playing Winston and a squishy of mine gets hooked, I tend to jump in front of the Roadhog. And with Orisa, you can do the same, especially because you're using Fortify. But it would mean you'd have to stop shooting, because shooting halves your movement speed.
So stop shooting, walk forward, try and take the shot. You know, get down, Mr. President, kind of a thing.
At least a part of the shot, because I think like a Roadhog, if he uses the animation count, so he hooks someone in, he does left click shoot, and then he does a melee right after that. It is an insta kill on basically any squishy, supposing he hits his shot normally. But if you can block, say, 100 of the damage, it's a difference between your Junkrat instantly dying or your Junkrat living and telling the tail and maybe getting out again.
Right. And that's
you have the helpful to take some damage.
And that can be the difference between a one fight and a lost fight.
Exactly. Your Junkrat does end up living, luckily.
I think the Brig booped him or something like that.
Could have been, yeah. It could also just been a Brig armor pack.
That's also true, yeah.
Because this is pretty good. You were like a tiny bit off in the timing, but you did pull people into all the damage that was going in, so that's good. Okay, Reinhardt's very close. I would step back a bit and just reset a bit. Because Reinhardt has not used Earth Shatter once, so he's bound to have it.
Right.
Okay, so you looked behind you and you saw there was like no one really there to help you. In that case, you have to make a choice. You have to maybe talk to your team. What I commonly say to people when I play with them, this is time to get back or die quickly. And I'm waiting to see what choice you'll make, but I think you're just trying to contest the payload for now.
It looks like we're contesting.
And just actually fighting it out.
Uh-oh.
Lost your Junkrat tire?
So yeah, he's telegraphing that pretty...
Yeah.
Oops. It's funny you should say that, because, yeah, he telegraphed that one pretty hard. Just a little bit of a recognition error. So we've got really two counterplays for... Well, really three counterplays that we could do for this. Really, every part of our kit counters this shatter right here. What one would you say is the one your go-to? Would you fortify to survive? Do you want to haul them back and make them whiff it? Or do you want to put down another shield just to block it?
Commonly, I would tend to keep my distance. And like in this case, what you try to do is flicker shield down just as he is pressing Q, right? And commonly, if you keep your distance from him, he doesn't even get a good opportunity to shatter you, because you're always like far away from him and you're always using your shield.
Right.
In this case, your shield gets like pushed past. They're just pushing past it, and then you can get a good shatter off.
Right.
So if your shield is not sufficient to, if your shield and general positioning are not significant enough to prevent an earth shatter, it's time to fortify. Halt is generally a more important ability than fortify. I can tell you that.
Okay, so you would go with the fortify rather than trying to bait him back with halt. And again, we ask ourselves the question is like, why are we in this position to be shattered? And it is because we dropped off of the high ground. And we did not give them enough space. So like, let's just say optimally, if we come back, like, I know the fight's already lost here, but we get a good viewpoint. Like if Ryan's here, like on the other side of that, whoops.
Yeah.
Where would you want to be other than where we are before we got shattered?
I mean, initially I'd want to hold high ground as long as I can, and if I see that team fight's lost, I'd probably use the high ground still to walk inside this little green room here, and then try to get back to my team. If I cannot get back to my team safely, I will literally just jump on the payload and shoot whatever squishy I see inside and hope that they kill me quickly.
Right, okay. So just the positioning errors kind of got us messed up there. All right.
Yeah.
Just
do keep in mind, if Rhino wants to shatter you when you're on high ground, he has to get the high ground from you.
All right, okay.
In all that time, he's taking damage, so...
We almost got it, dude. We almost got that shield.
We almost got it. Okay, so the enemy has a Reaper now, and a Tracer.
How does Orisa fare against Reaper?
Not very well, unless you keep your distance from him. The thing is, though, this goes for basically all main tanks. All main tanks are very poor against Reaper for several reasons. Reaper does an absolute mad amount of damage up close, and do keep in mind, almost all main tanks need to be up close to do damage. And on top of that, Reaper has self-sustain, and a main tank does very little damage. Winston has 60 damage per second, Reinhardt has 75 with his hammer swing, and Orisa does 16 damage per shot, which does have a headshot modifier, but still, it's not very much, as you can tell.
Right. So
Reaper has self-sustain, so it's very hard to actually duel a Reaper.
Right.
Up close.
Okay. So let's talk about this. It looks like we're kind of in contest mode. Do you think dropping here and instantly bongoing was the right decision? And if not, or if so, what could we have done to make this play better?
I believe your diva is not in the fight, so I commonly would not try to recontest this, just because you guys never really died as a group, so you're never really back into this fight as a full team. So now there's like you were one of the last in your team to die, so basically there were a couple people in spawn, and then you died, and now a couple people are running back, and some people died again, so there's a couple people in spawn, etc., etc. So there's not really a full regroup mode. And now you're kind of trying to contest the payload with Orisa, who has to be very up close to contest now, which is very dangerous against Brigitte, Reaper, and Reinhardt. I think your Junkrat's with you.
Maybe.
And the rest I'm not sure of, but...
Okay, so kind of chucking a lot of ultimate charge and chucking a lot of ultimates into what's basically an already lost fight.
Basically, the only value, like, if you really want to contest this fight with your Supercharger, which I think is not really the smartest call, but it could work, like it's maybe worth a try. If you can trade it for at least 2 enemy ultimates, or at least 1 very important enemy ultimate, I would say go for it.
Okay. So...
But if you're committing to this fight with bongos, you need to get some value out of it.
Right.
Okay, let the enemy use ultimates or win the fight.
Right, at least hoping we can milk this to 0, at the very, very least.
Oh, wait, you have your own Brigitte now, that was a flail I saw. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of like the desperation mode we're in. I don't per se want to fault this player for this, because he was the first to contest from the high ground, and he had to drop down. And when he's in such close quarters, it's the prime moment for heroes like Reaper to get up close and personal with you. And as you can see now, like your Pharah just came out of spawn, there's someone way in the enemy backline.
Now, we did get it to 0, and we did get Death Blossom, though. So, not all is lost.
Sure, you did get like some value out of it. Do know though, you basically committed to the fight with 6 people, and they only used 1 ultimate. So whoever in the enemy team dealt damage and did not use their ultimate, basically got a bit of an ultimate gain.
Right.
And getting the overtime on a second phase is not really as relevant.
As much.
It, like, okay, it's time to get out of here. Reaper's up close. Okay, I like the usage of Halt here, because you use him to pull him like away and use your shield for cover again. But as you can see, you were forced to use both your Fortify and your Halt again instantly.
And also,
so you have to be...
One thing too, if I will pop in, sorry, really quick, is that payload has been uncontested moving right now, not even with pressure on the shield. What would you be doing as an Orisa? Not even in terms of how you duel the Reaper, just in where you'd be positioning yourself right now.
I would not be positioned on the left side. Simple reason being, the only way I can contest from the left side is through the little window we just saw, which is very up close and personal with the enemy, which is not what you want with Orisa.
Okay.
Holding the we commonly call the America truck on EU. I don't know what you call it in NA. This little truck on the side.
Okay.
But I would commonly hold there and just put shield pressure on. Right now you're in a position where you're dueling Reaper, and I think Trace is just coming up the stairs up top left as well.
Okay.
If you can secure the kills, it's some value, but do know Reaper has a shift, which I think he just used, but he has some self-sustain and some like escapability, and Trace has an absolute mad amount of that.
Yeah.
So you absolutely, if you don't want to like put pressure on the shields on their front line, you have to absolutely get those kills to get value out of your operation.
So in most circumstances, you do let the payload round this corner safely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simple reason being, Orisa wants to play keep away, and I would rather have one good fight near the end where you actually hold them, than try to force one fight very up close, lose that, in which case they get a lot of payload progress anyways.
This sight line isn't very long, all things considered.
No, and if you want to hold them from the top left corner where you're holding, you're looking at even closer than those boxes on the top left right now. You're holding even behind that.
Right, so there's too many ways to attack that position.
It's just not a very favorable position, because the entire enemy team cover now, they have Brigitte, they have Reinhardt, and they have Reaper. They all want to be up close and personal, and Tracer to some extent as well. So if you if you want to fight them in close quarters, they will say, "Sure, dude, let's go for it," and they'd probably come on top.
Yeah,
come out on top.
I will say this for a low gold tank main with only aim's not too bad.
Sure, mechanics are relatively decent.
Mechanics are pretty decent, so. But yeah, the payload has now rounded the corner and is now already approaching where we would want to hold, and it's kind of too late. And unfortunately, I don't think the Junkrat. I think the Junkrat probably would have died regardless. But now we're losing players.
And you've lost your main damage output, whereas their Honzo is still alive.
Right.
So.
Again, positioning here.
It's too up close.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's just see how this pans out, and after that I can ask for a pause again when needed.
Right. In terms of halt usage, would you halt this right here?
I would halt as soon as they press W onto me, so as soon as they're like looking to attack me, I'll press halt to displace them.
So not yet, but when they decide to push on you, that's when you halt.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or I would wait for one of my teammates to use their ultimates again, because we do still have a Diva, and we still have some heroes we can combo with. So if I, for instance, hear my Diva Bomb going off, I'll pull them in. Yeah. Now you're in a sticky situation, because you wanted to hold them close, and then the Reaper came from the left flank, the Tracer was behind you, and you had some damage on the front line, so you had like 3 angles from which you took damage.
Right.
And like I said, Orisa's shield is fixed in the ground, so once you put it down, there's no way to to replace or anything. So you can block one angle, and then the other 2 are just free damage on you. Okay.
Not a whole lot we can do here.
I would have used Fortify earlier because you were already down to 200 HP.
Okay.
And Moira ultimate does go through shields.
Okay. Oof.
You might get a chance to
Those are some big eliminations.
Yeah, but you're equal now.
At least we got him into overtime.
That's still winnable, so I would still go for this.
Halt, yes, no, maybe?
It was a good one. Because you didn't know whether the Moira had her ultimate or her shift, sorry. But either way, if she didn't have her halt, she might have ended up getting killed by either you or your teammates. And otherwise, you just forced out her halt, which is a massive combo, because Moira is very hard to kill when she has her halt up, because you can get away so easily.
Good hold.
But as soon as she's used her halt, it's a very good target to focus fire. So.
Okay. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up just about there, because it has been close to an hour, and I don't want to overwhelm the reviewee or the coachy with information. But like, if I always like to end up my stream or my reviews with trying to like sum up improvements that they could find in as few words as possible, because we went over a lot of topics. We went over halt, we went over all the abilities, we went over positioning, we went over matchups. But if you could say, like, if we just did 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you think that this person could improve on in the Orisa gameplay, either the easiest or the ones that would have the biggest impact, or you think the ones that are the most important. Are there any things that we talked about that you think would be most important?
Yeah, this might be a bit abstract, but the absolute most like fundamental thing I'd look at, like the number 1, will be your playstyle, because you have to adjust your playstyle according to what your teammates are running, so what composition you're running, and to what the enemy is running. And if you recognize what the enemy is running and how you can like counter that to the best extent, that would make sure that your ability usage is a bit better and your positioning is a bit better.
So we'll just say aware playstyle, because just simply being aware of what your teammates and the enemy teammates are running will assist you trying to think objectively about what should I be doing in this circumstance. Okay.
Exactly. Be very conscious of that.
Yes.
Second, I would say positioning.
Okay.
And positioning kind of flows through with playstyle. If you know what playstyle you want to run as a team, and you know what playstyle the enemy wants to run, your like positioning can be logically concluded in a lot of cases. So I would say that playstyle kind of like positioning kind of flows through with playstyle.
But if you would say, like, if we just look at this VOD that we just reviewed in terms of positioning errors, what were the like big positioning errors that you saw in description?
2 big positioning errors I saw is not holding high ground enough and being too close to the enemy.
Okay, so we can just abbreviate that HG and too close. Especially considering in terms of playstyle, the too close playstyle against a Ryan Roadhog Reaper, not how you want to be playing it.
And Brigitte and Moira.
Brigitte
is also up close, and Moira also fancies some close range duels.
Right. Okay. Any last little tidbits that you saw in terms of cooldown usage or
ability usage? Yeah.
Okay.
Any
one ability that you saw that was a little bit underused? Halt. Okay.
Halt.
And what about his halt usage?
Like I said, halt is like your playmaking card. It's when I like review Orisa gameplay, I always look at hold usage the most. The simple reason being is that an Orisa that has very good hold usage can have a massive impact during the match, whereas one that doesn't really have good hold usage is just kind of there and facilitating with shielding and some damage, whereas an Orisa with, like I said, very good hold usage can have a massive impact on the game.
Okay, so and how he used them with ultimates, how he used them with displacement.
I commonly use them with ultimates. Like in this case, you played a part of the match with Junkrat, Pharah, and Deva, and all three of their ultimates, if you set them up correctly, you can get a massive combination with Halt and then either one of those ultimates. And it's not incredibly difficult if you just press tab every now and then. So I would press tab in between team fights or when we're regrouping, and I would just have a look and see if anyone has their ultimate ready or like close to ready.
Okay.
So if I would see my Junkrat as a tire, I would just say, "Hey Junkrat, let me know when you're going to tire. I'll pull them in."
Okay.
And then as soon as you would hear the Junkrat either say, "Hey dude, I'm going to ult," or you would hear the ultimate Q line go off, I would try to pull as many people together as I can, and I would just coordinate with my Junkrat again. I would just say, "I'm pulling them on the payload," and then he knows where to go, right?
Right. Right. What if you could say one thing that this player did well? What would you say?
From what I saw, he had a general like good understanding of his role. Like he made a few mistakes with regards to like ability usage and positioning, but he was generally holding the front line, and he was generally not wasting too much time trying to poke down tracers or snipers and whatnot. He was pressuring the enemy tanks well.
That was good.
So he knew his role in the team quite well, and he knew quite well what his limitations were, not per se as a player, but as a hero.
Okay.
Because Orisa is very difficult to shoot tracers and stuff down with, but you're very good at dealing with tanks. So
okay,
I would say those are the good things.
Well, perfect. Well done. I appreciate the review, Argyll. Thank you so much.
No worries.
For those of you again that you missed out, this is Argyll. He is a 4.3k peak EU main tank coach and player. So he offered to join me on stream, and obviously we really appreciate that. So Argyll, thank you so much. Again, if you guys have not followed him on Twitch, he does stream. What's your stream schedule like nowadays?
I commonly stream on Thursday afternoons. That's EU time.
So
and it's usually from about 1 or 2 p.m. CEST, Central European Summertime, until 5 p.m. CEST.
Okay, so like, you know, early, mid, late morning for us filthy Americans. So you guys give him a check out. But yeah, thank you so much again, man. We appreciate it.